Good evening, everyone, and you're all very welcome to this evening's webinar, which is being brought to you tonight by the Teagasc Mayo Advisory Staff. My name is Brendan Garry, and I work in Teagasc and Ballinrobe, and tonight, for the next hour, I'm delighted to be your host for this webinar on this Tuesday evening. Now, this evening's webinar is a dedicated standalone webinar, which will focus on two main areas, with the first topic being agricultural education, and our second topic tonight will examine elements of farm succession. And nowadays, we hear a lot about generational renewal. So this is a very important topic, and we will see how one fits in with one another. Tonight, we have two well-known local Teagasc Mayo advisors with us who will speak on these topics. And our first speaker tonight will be Padraig Walsh from Teagasc Ballina, who will provide an overview on the main benefits of completing the Green Cert. And Padraig will give an update on the upcoming schedule of courses here in Teagasc Mayo. So stay tuned for that in a few moments. Later this evening, Enda Geoghegan from Teagasc Ballina will talk to us about farm succession and how having the Green Cert fits in with succession planning. Now, you, the viewers this evening at home, are being encouraged to engage with our panellists here tonight, and we ask you to type your questions into the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens, phones or tablets. And later this evening, my colleague Abagh Harten from Teagasc Ballinrobe will put your questions live to both Enda and Padraig here this evening, so do type your questions in during the night. As always, this webinar is being recorded and it will be available to watch back on the Teagasc Mayo YouTube channel in the coming days. So keep an eye out on our channel there. So without further delay, I'll now ask you, Padraig, to start sharing your presentation with us, and it's over to you now, Padraig. Good evening, Padraig.
Good evening, Brendan. Thanks very much, and hello to everyone, and welcome to everyone. Start sharing my screen there now. Can you see that?
That's perfect now, Padraig. Yeah. So look at over to you now.
Thanks very much. Yeah, look at the Green Cert and its role in farm succession. Like, it's a broad topic, and I suppose the first thing that comes into my head when I'm thinking of this really is planning. How important it is to plan this thing out in advance. Farm succession, it only happens kind of once in a generation. In Ireland, an awful lot of the farms are transferred through, normal farm transfer, family transfer. So succession and the Green Cert and all of these are very much linked, but planning in advance, I suppose, is a big part of this. And just, I suppose, very briefly, and it will be briefly here, we're just going to do a little bit in the Teagasc Mayo Regional Education Centres. We have the two of them there in Ballina and Ballinrobe. Teagasc are not the only providers of agricultural education courses, to be clear on that. We are talking about the advantages of doing the Green Cert and where the Green Cert sits. And it's the Green Cert is the baseline of this presentation. In Mayo, the Green Cert is provided in two different options, I suppose. The two options locally here in Teagasc Mayo would be the Teagasc Distance Education Green Cert course and the Teagasc Part-Time course then for adults that are 23 years of age and older. Really our guidance really for younger people, the age of 17, 18, 19 up to the age of 22 really will be guided towards ag colleges really. That would be the Teagasc options for the Green Cert. And just in a little bit more detail what the different options at local level involve. The Distance Education Green Cert course, it's for people that would have a level 6 or higher non-agricultural major award, in advance, that they would have this, that would be part of the entry requirement to get into that course. The course runs for about 25 days over 15 to 18 months. It's blended learning, and I suppose the way that we run it in Mayo is definitely that we run it on, once every 3 weeks, every third Friday is our model. It's not an entirely online course. There's, it's a lot of skills and exams and practicals and assignments to be done in person. So we like to bring our classes together every 3 weeks. Every 3 weeks also we do a Zoom session, of course, but we like to bring the people together there. It's good for camaraderie and good for the class. And in terms of the, what the Green Cert involves is level 5 and level 6 combined. Our part-time option for adults, mentioned earlier, it's for people that are over 23 years of age. There's two components in that as well. It's a similar course, but just a different sort of delivery model. It's 1 day a week over 2 years. It's usually a weekday. We have a course here in Ballina at the minute. It's on a Tuesday. A lot more contact time than the distance option, and it's paced accordingly, and there's definitely more scope to discuss things academically and with classmates, we're saying there. So look, at people that are eligible for the distance class often take this option because there's more scope for discussion and more contact time. So, when we're talking about succession and the Green Cert and its role in succession, we're looking at the benefits of doing the Green Cert, I suppose, is what Brendan tasked us with this evening. And I've kind of divided those into a number of headings, and some of them are a bit more detailed than others. So we'll just go through them there now. And first and foremost, the educational benefit of doing the Green Cert is huge. Look at it's a big task taking on a farm, taking on the enterprises on a farm. The environment has changed a lot. The actual environment that we're living in is very much to the fore. So technical skills and knowledge and wide ranging there would be covered in that course. We definitely would have exposure to good farming activity and practices there in doing the Green Cert. Whatever your provider is, doing it in the college or doing it here in the local centres, you college farms, local farmers. So that's part of this thing as well. You get to benchmark what you're doing with other farmers. A big focus in the Green Cert as well on farm safety. Um, it's a dangerous working environment. A very high number of accidents in the farming industry. So important that we sort of focus on that. Sustainability and work-life balance is huge as well because an awful lot of people now are part-time farmers and the farming enterprises still take time. So there has to be kind of a balance there struck between what's sustainable and what isn't sustainable and what's possible and what's doable. There's a lot of pulls there on farmers, young farmers, particularly with families and everything else. A focus, of course, on computer-based farm financial management tools and skills. A good focus on communication and leadership also. And some of the students, no doubt, will tell us, some of our own graduates will tell us that, we learned a good lot in the course, but we learned as much also from the cohort of students that we have in our group, in the discussion there that they'd have. And definitely people have ended up coming out of our courses there with friends for life and, that they're benchmarking against and tic-tacking with and checking how's your farm going, how am I going, how is one comparing to the other? And it gives just a good old reference there for people to compare themselves with. No, we're getting into the bigger stuff then, I suppose, the benefits of the Green Cert, but possible benefits of doing the Green Cert. And this is where the whole thing of planning again comes into this, because a lot of the benefits out of doing the Green Cert are related to your age. And just before I could forget this later, just to make the point that a young farmer from a revenue commissioner's point of view is someone that's under 35 years of age. Whereas a young farmer from the Department of Agriculture, the DAFM, the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine point of view, a young farmer is still a young farmer at up to 40 years of age. But it's 40 for department, pretty much for everything, barring this succession farm partnership tax credit. 35 is the upper age limit for a lot of the benefits revenue wise of doing the Green Cert. So the headline one used to always be, the stamp duty relief for young trained farmers. And a young trained farmer is someone that's young, under 35, trained, Green Cert done, farmer. That means that they have a herd number in their name. It's not that they're actually just farming actively at home. They're farming with a herd number. Now, in a lot of family situations, to be clear on this, and we have this consanguinity relief mentioned here at the bottom of the slide. In a family situation, if you're inheriting the family farm from a parent or a blood relation, you could be availing of consanguinity relief. And that consanguinity relief will bring your 7.5% stamp duty that is normally paid from 7.5% down to 1%. Consanguinity relief will take off 6.5% there. But to get the full stamp duty relief in a family situation, or if you're going out there purchasing land from the marketplace, which is not from a blood relation at all, stamp duty there is 7.5%. That's 7,500 on every 100,000 valuation of a farm. It comes to an awful lot of money. So that, particularly if you're thinking of buying land, this stamp duty relief for young trained farmers is huge. There is a business plan I've noted there as well to be done to avail of this relief. The 3-year rule, sorry, it used to be a 4-year, and I just noted that there that you may not have the Green Cert done at the time you have the land transferred, but you're given, it used to be 4 years, but now it's 3 years you're given from the time of purchasing the land to get the Green Cert completed. So that's a 3-year rule. And you'd pay the stamp duty up front in that case. And then when you'd have your Green Cert done, you're given a further couple of years, 4 years there to claim the stamp duty back. Another possible benefit of doing the Green Cert from a revenue commissioner's point of view, again for young trained farmers under 35, is this idea of enhanced stock relief. Enhanced stock relief. A lot of young people, when they inherit a farm, they just get the bare farm. There mightn't be any stock on it. And they'd be, building up stock numbers on the farm. And any farmer is going to get 25% stock relief. And that's what is stock relief. Stock relief is a relief you get there, which kind of gives you tax credit for the fact that you've invested some of your farm profits or the money you're making from the farm in building up your stock numbers. So you can get 100% stock relief for a maximum of 4 years as a young trained farmer under 35 years of age. That's a biggie. A succession farm partnership tax credit. That came in there a number of years ago as well. And what's this about? Well, this is providing a young farmer or a young farmer in a partnership with an older farmer, a parent in many cases, that would have a registered farm partnership. But they go further. They say, right, we want to make this a succession farm partnership. And a succession farm partnership, part of the deal on that to get this tax credit is that, but at the end of year 3, the older parent is obliged to transfer some of the land over, a significant proportion of the land over to the younger person. So it's kind of a gradual process here through which the transfer of the land can take place from one generation to the next. And the incentive in this case here is this tax credit, which is worth a tax credit. It's worth 5,000 a year, which if you're paying tax at 20% rate means you could potentially have 25,000 there of farm income, which would be kind of, it wouldn't mean hidden from tax, but would be free of tax because you'd have like 20% of 25,000 is 5,000 and the tax credit is worth 5,000 a year. So look, that's a big one. And I didn't make the point here, or making the point here, that there's an EU state there's a state cap aid or a cap on the amount of state aid you can get. Sorry, from the EU in this case, it used to be 70,000. It's now gone up to 100,000. So the combination of these three here: the stamp duty relief, enhanced stock relief, and succession farm partnership tax credit. There is a limit on this, but look, most people are safely under that limit anyway. And you know that the limit has a fair bit of scope in it. Further to those, I've included two other benefits here of doing the Green Cert from a revenue commissioner's point of view. And they're not just on the same vibe. Agricultural relief is what? That's a relief that young farmers can get on the transfer of a farm asset from capital acquisitions tax. Capital acquisitions tax is this, it's gift or inheritance tax, it's called. And gift or inheritance, that means if the asset is transferred, the farm asset is transferred in the lifetime of the transferor to the transferee or after their passing, either way, it's the same tax that applies. And there's a threshold there in family situations of 400,000, I think it's 400,000 now, that the asset can be worth, above which you would pay capital acquisitions tax at the rate of 33%. I'm not going into the total full details of this, but a relief that can be obtained in certain circumstances there would be agricultural relief. And agricultural relief would bring down the value of that asset from 100% of its value to 10% of its value, provided that the person, looking to get this relief passes a thing called the farmer test, which is based on having 80% of their assets being agricultural in nature. And that was, the farmer test was enough to get this agricultural relief for quite a while. But there, a number of years ago, there was, new rules brought into that kind of required not only would the person get an agricultural relief, have to pass the farmer test, they'd also have to spend 50% of the normal working time farming or have the Green Cert done, or indeed lease out the farm to someone that would meet these qualifications. So for people that were struggling there to meet the 50% rule in terms of 50% of their normal working time farming, the Green Cert was kind of making them a bit more bulletproof there in terms of being able to avail of agricultural relief from capital acquisitions tax. And consanguinity relief, which is I mentioned it earlier, is the blood relief that you can get, or family-related relief you can get from stamp duty, which brings stamp duty from 7.5% down to 1%. That had a similar rule. At the same time, in the same budget, there was a 50% of your normal working time farming or have the Green Cert done clause brought into that as well. So again, that was a help. That was a help. Having the Green Cert done was a help there to meet the conditions of the consanguinity relief. You wouldn't normally have to do, the Green Cert to get consanguinity relief. You could be over 35 and still get consanguinity relief. You mightn't have the Green Cert done to get consanguinity relief. But if you were, someone that was trying to get consanguinity relief and you weren't meeting the time element of it, the Green Cert was definitely helping your case. I'll move on there to possible benefits there from the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine type benefits there as well, because it has been the case for a number of years that the department, more than the revenue are given incentives there for the transfer of land to young people, the department are trying again to help with this whole idea of generational renewal as well, and trying to, incentivize the transfer of land or the farming of land, particularly by younger trained farmers. And it's not, it's younger trained farmers as opposed to just younger farmers. So what are we talking about here where the possible benefits could be? We're talking about things like the CISYF, this Complementary Income Scheme for Young Trained Farmers. CISYF, you'll hear it called. It's for people that, as we said, they're less than or no more than certainly 40 years of age in their first year of farming. 5 years or less farming. Why am I mentioning that? You know, a young farmer that has the Green Cert done that's less than 40 years at the time that they apply first for this CISYF payment. That they have 5 years or less farming done. That's a key thing. You know, if you had a herd number for 10 years and you're farming there for 10 years, you hadn't the Green Cert done, you're under 40, you come along, do the Green Cert and say, oh, I'll get the CISYF. You know, that 5 years that you're farming, the fact you're farming for 10 years and therefore over 5 years would come against you in that case. You wouldn't be eligible. So again, this is part of the whole thing of planning. I mentioned planning at the very first minute, you know, that important that we plan for this, that we kind of young farmers would, you know, set themselves up to maybe not get the herd number too soon in their farming life, so that they would, you know, in case it would rule them out in future times of some of the benefits that would come along to them afterwards. That payment, by the way, is a valuable payment. There's a fund there per year, and the fund is split into the number of applicants and hectares that people would apply for each year. You know, it used to be paid on the number of entitlements you have. It's now paid on the number of eligible hectares you had. So I think last year it was around 165 or something like that euro per hectare on the amount of hectares that you had applied on. There is a cap on it, but you know, it's worth a lot of money. This is worth a lot of money. There had been a previous version of this in the last round of cap that was worth a good bit less. So, you know, it has stepped up quite a bit there in the current round of cap. The second potential heading that I'd just like to mention here in this regard is the National Reserve for BIS entitlements. You know, that you could, as well as getting a top up, you could, you know, apply to the National Reserve as a young trained farmer under no more than 40 years of age in your first year in farming, again, less than 5 years farming, and you could get free entitlements from the National Reserve on eligible hectares that you're farming that don't have entitlements on them. And this, you know, clear definition of what an eligible entitlement is, or an eligible hectare is, should I say, and what eligible land is as well. Land that doesn't have entitlements associated with it is what we're talking about in this case. Also, the scope there for a farmer that's over 40 years of age, not a young farmer, but a new entrant to farming at any age, provided they're less than 3 years farming at the time they have their Green Cert done and that they first apply for the National Reserve. So, you know, again, if someone coming to farming at 60, not having the green, you know, not having a herd number, do the Green Cert, then get the herd number. They're less than 3 years farming, they can potentially get these entitlements from the National Reserve. They won't get the CISYF. They won't get the top up payment because they're over the age, but they wouldn't be entitled to entitlements from the National Reserve. The TAMS is something I want to mention briefly as well. The Targeted Agricultural Modernisation Scheme, TAMS. You know, you'd hear a lot about this for grant aid at 60%. And that's a possible benefit there, that you'd get the 60% grant rate as a young farmer, you know, less than 40 years of age again, and less than 5 years farming again. Whereas, you know, the previous generation or the parent maybe in the case may only have got a 40% grant rate. So, you know, or if you didn't have, even as a young farmer that didn't have the Green Cert, you'd only get the 40% grant rate either. So someone, again, considering that there's a big investment to be made on a farm and they're looking at how to plan for this, you know, they might just say, hang on a minute, you know, parents might get a 40% grant, the younger person could get a 60% grant, and that could be the determinant factor in sort of swinging the farm over to the younger generation in some shape or format. And I know Enda is going to talk about that in a few minutes' time there, just in relation to, you know, how people would potentially farm collaboratively, or how they could maximize or potentially lose out on grant aid if they weren't careful. So Enda's just going to talk us through that one there later. And another possible benefit there, and it's listed last on the list because it's the most recent one that was introduced there to this mix, is the Woman Farmer Capital Investment Scheme, which came out there a couple of years ago. And this doesn't have an age limit on it. Someone who does the Green Cert that didn't have a herd number before, could come along, do the Green Cert at any age, and, you know, make themselves eligible by getting a herd number. You know, the Green Cert plus the herd number would make them eligible there for the Woman Farmer Capital Investment Scheme. and that's a good incentive there. Not we're looking for the farming of land by younger people, but I mean the age is one side. The breakdown to male to female farmers isn't a good mix either. Like there's far more male farmers or men farmers than women farmers. So this is an incentive there to try and encourage the farming of land by women and is welcome. And just by the by, just to make the point, I suppose, in our Green Cert classes, the thing we've definitely noticed in recent years is that the profile of the students we see in front of us, there's far more female students in classes than we used to have, which is very welcome. The gender balance is far better in our Green Cert classes than it would have been 10 years ago. And it's just reflecting society and it's reflecting the farmers that's out there, which is very welcome. A little point I want to make there as well, just in terms of collaborative farming, the CISYF and the National Reserve. Preparation work to be done. I'm asking the question, and I would say argue that there definitely is preparation work to be done in that regard. Um, it is a requirement there for someone that's availing of the CISYF and the National Reserve that you would be able to demonstrate that you have financial and managerial control by the younger farmer. These incentives are not, just to put someone on a herd number and draw extra money and draw down this thing. It's to prove. You need proof there that the younger generation is and can demonstrate that they have financial and managerial control of the farm. And proof would be and has to be submitted invoices, shown in the younger farmer's name, bank account extracts or bank accounts showing that the young farmer's name is very much on the bank account to which the payments are being made and which invoices and receipts and everything are coming from and payments made into, to show that they are in managerial control of the farm as well, and receipts also, uh, and are they ready for submission to the department is the question. You need to be planning this thing out. It needs to be a genuine collaborative farm. It needs to be a farm where there is definitely demonstrable proof that the younger farmer and the older farmer who would be in collaborative farming, and what I mean by that is like a joint herd number or a partnership, that they really are farming this farm. And of course, the question, even for a sole applicant for the CISYF, have they full control also, and can they prove that? And it's easier in that case to show that the invoices and bank account and receipts and everything are in the young person's name if it's a sole applicant. But it's very, it's something the department are very keen to check on and have proof of, because they're investing good money here in supporting young active farmers, and all they're looking for is a small bit of proof that the young farmers are active in this farming enterprise. And briefly now, I'm conscious of time, I suppose, information on this kind of thing, where would you get it? Teagasc advisors, ag consultants, accountants and solicitors, big time. All of these people are the people that'll be walking you through the farm succession process. There's an awful lot of paperwork to be done when you're transferring a farm, not putting people off it by any means, but just lots of ducks, as I said, to line up. So your advisor consultant will have a big role to play in this, as has your accountants and solicitors. The top line, I said, there are benefits from doing the Green Cert have changed and will change again. And you look at on an ongoing basis, there's changes we knew about in advance, and then more surprises when they came out. So look, it's a dynamic environment. It's changing all the time. There is some booklets out there. Teagasc had a Transferring the Family Farm booklet there. It came out just very recently, the 2025 version. It's available on the Teagasc website. It was produced there in the recent succession workshops that took place around the country. A lot of information like what we're doing here tonight on the Teagasc website, on the Teagasc YouTube channels. Revenue and department as well have a lot of information, relating to succession on their websites. Very briefly, I just wanted to mention, people would say, yeah, well, I have a course done. It's not exactly the Green Cert. Where does that fit? How does this work for this thing? Well, both the Revenue and Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine have lists of courses of what they deem to be eligible as, to demonstrate that you are a young trained farmer, and therefore that you get some of those benefits that we mentioned earlier. Courses maybe that were done outside of the country that would be equivalent to the courses here would be eligible for a letter of equivalence, and Teagasc has a role very much in that. People are regularly coming to Teagasc there, looking to see the course I did outside of Ireland, is it equivalent to the Green Cert, and can I get a letter from Teagasc confirming that it is equivalent, which I will then give to the department or to Revenue to show that I am a young trained farmer. The revenue list is maintained by Teagasc currently. The Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine list, two separate lists. Any of their terms and conditions documents, the CISYF, National Reserve, TAMS, any of those have the list of what the qualifications are. there isn't a combined list for both the revenue and department. You'd say, well, why is there not the same qualifications? They're not exactly the same. So you could be on one and not on the other if you had a qualification from somewhere else. But look, getting back to what we're talking about, the title of this is the Green Cert. Anyone that has the Green Cert done will get all the benefits we talked of. If you had a course done equivalent somewhere else, you'll get the same benefits. And the time implications, the preparation work required. If you have the Green Cert done, you have the Green Cert done. There's no second guessing that. But it can take time to get a letter of equivalence, or it can take time to demonstrate that the course you did somewhere else is equivalent to the Green Cert. And finally, just in relation to the upcoming Teagasc Green Cert courses that are available, Teagasc are starting shortly enough now, starting soon in Teagasc Ballinrobe, a distance education Green Cert class in this December or January 2026. It's subject to a numbers cap. There's a limit in the amount of people that can apply for it. And anyone that's interested there, I'll give you contact details in a second. This is the one now where you have to have the level 6 non-agricultural qualification required to participate in this option. And the second course that we plan to start, we have a part-time class going in Ballina at the moment. We're hoping to start another one in about a year's time, in late 2026 in Teagasc Ballina. Now, it is subject to us having minimum numbers there to get the necessary numbers to get the class going. So again, if you're interested in doing this, if you're looking at this, think this would be for me, make contact with ourselves there and we'll add your name to the list. And who are we talking about there? Well, our colleague, Cora Owens, who's based in Teagasc and Ballinrobe, is very much involved there in taking your name and registering people's interest in participating in the courses. So you can reach out to Cora, no problem, at her email address, which is cora.owens@teagasc.ie, as you see on screen, or ring Teagasc and Ballinrobe directly on 09495 41125. That's just to make contact there, as you said, to register your interest in participating in a course. No, I think I've gone on a bit. Thank you very much for your time and interest in this, and there'll be questions later on. I think, Brendan, that's the way it's going to work, isn't it?
Absolutely, Padraig. Yeah, and thank you very much there for that interesting presentation. Indeed, we'll get you to stop sharing your presentation there with us. And at this stage of the evening, I just reminded our viewers again this evening that you can put your questions in there to the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screens or phones or tablets, and later Ava will pick up the questions and will put them to both Padraig and Enda. So at this stage of the evening, I'll now call on my colleague Enda Geoghegan from Teagasc and Ballina, and Inda's going to talk to us about succession planning. So good evening, Enda.
Good evening, Brendan, and thanks very much for having me. I'll share my screen now.
That's perfect, Enda. Thank you very much.
No, Brendan, yeah, thanks very much. And Padraig mentioned one word there, and it's one word that when you're thinking about farm succession, everybody should put in really, really big writing, and that's the whole word of planning. And what I'm going to focus on tonight is, we'll say, even before you partake in the Green Cert, during the time you're partaking in the Green Cert, and indeed after the Green Cert, what you should be thinking about, what you should be focusing in on in the whole area of farm succession. So tonight what we're going to focus on is where can you get help in and around the farm succession, highlight some key areas you may need more information on. So look, when we're talking about farm succession, it's one of the biggest decisions a person or a farming family will ever make in their lives. So when it's one of the biggest decisions there, we really need to be absolutely positive that we've all the boxes ticked, all the T's crossed and I's dotted, because you can only do it once. When you're doing it, you have to do it right. And indeed, I'll be focusing in on the softer skills or the softer issues around the whole area of farm succession, while Padraig focused in on an awful lot of the financial stuff there. I'm going to talk about the whole area of maybe emotions, and we'll say just making sure everybody is brought in the process and everyone is involved in the process as the whole process occurs. And I suppose, look, You may ask what I'm a climate change advisor. What makes me an expert in any of this? None of us, I think, are experts because no two transfers will ever be the same. You're going to, we'll say, every case is going to be different. I have, we'll say, done mediation training. I'm a qualified mediator, and I have done a few courses, we'll say, on the whole area of succession and how to get the conversation started. So, and how to guide people, we'll say, through this whole process. So that's very important. And I suppose when we're talking about the farm transfer and the transfer challenge, we have to look at both generations, the outgoing generation, which would be what we call the asset owner, that the asset owner, the person that's given over the asset, that they are happy with the decision, that they are content, and that we'll say they have a plan in place for for their future, and that they're going to be financially secure in the future because it is a big decision. One day you're the owner of a farm, the next day you're not the owner of a farm, and you're more or less, we'll say, out there with a whole new blank page ahead of you. So we have to plan for that, and we have to have that in place before the transfer occurs. And I suppose at the time of starting the Green Cert, this conversation may have occurred. If it hasn't occurred, well, then it's an ideal opportunity to sit down with the family and have that conversation. What is the future going to look like? Who is the farmer going to be in the farm? What process is there going to be there in place, or what guidelines, or what we'll say, what is their life going to be like for the person that's transferring the farm? And equally, for the person that's receiving the farm, what's their life going to be like? Who's going to be living in the farmhouse? An awful lot of these issues have to be thought about, and it involves the whole family. So we'll say other family members would ideally be involved in this whole process. And when the whole family is involved with this process, everybody should be clear then on, we'll say, as Porrick would have mentioned there, the tax and legal implications around here. So when we're talking about tax and legal implications, we're getting other people, and we'll say, involved here. We're getting accountants, we're getting solicitors. It's important, we'll say, that the plan that you have in place, that God forbid if something was to happen, that there is a safety net there if anything gets knocked off course, so that there is a plan B. Hopefully, you'll never need the plan B, but just in case you do, it's very important that a plan B there is in place. For a farm business, it's very important that family relationships are strong, because if family relationships aren't strong, what you're going to have is you're going to have a farm business that may be not thriving, that may be disjointed, going in many different directions. So it's very important that strong family relationships will say exist there. And that's how are them strong family relationships formed? Sitting down around the table, putting a plan in place, making sure everybody is involved. As I said before, it's a very big milestone in a family's history. If you were to ask your we'll say the older generation, do they remember how they got the farm? And they'll be able to tell you how emotional that time was, um, how it occurred, whether it occurred early, whether it occurred late, what the other family members will say thought about it. So it is about getting the whole process right. And when we're talking about the Green Cert, that we'll say individual that is completing the Green Cert may be the one that's going to be taking over the farm. But if they're not going to be the one that's taking over the farm, then are they the best person to be doing the Green Cert? This all has to be talked out, and it's so important that we'll say it's done right, because as I said, you only get one opportunity of it. And as I said there, we'll say with transfers, you have, we'll say, advantages, we'll say, when we're talking about transfers, and advantages of early transfers. So this is a lifetime transfer where a farm is, we'll say, fully transferred from maybe a father and mother to a son or daughter. Um, it's easier to plan tax um, mitigation strategies when all parties are alive. So you can make sure that it's it's been, I suppose, tax clever around it, how you put a plan in place that you're paying the minimum amount of tax while ticking all the boxes. Of course, there's talk about the fair deal scheme there. You're taking the fair deal scheme equation out of it for the older person that is transferring the farm. So if a person will say 65 or 70 is transferring the farm, um, there is a 5 year look back on it. So we'll say somebody at 65 transferring the farm, that farm is still considered in the fair deal up until the time they're 70. So that's just something to be aware of there. So again, if somebody will say was transferring the farm at 65, um, they will be totally out of the fair deal net by the time they're 70. And all in all, please God, you wouldn't need a nursing home at the age of 70. So you're going to be out of that equation there. And it gives the younger generation time to invest and grow the business. So that's very important that the younger generation will say, while they're doing the Green Cert, that they have all this knowledge in place there, and that they can implement their learnings, we'll say, on the farm, and invest in the future, and indeed grow the farm for their own family. All tax incentives are aimed at those less than 35 years of age. So, as Padraig said there, the difference between a young farmer is very important from the point of view of the Department of Agriculture, is less than 35 years of age. So that's very important there. And again, we'll say from the point of view of revenue, then it's, or point of view of revenue, it's less than 35, and Department of Agriculture it's less than 40. So just to be aware of them differences there, but Porrick has emphasized that, and we'll say touch on that again in the questions later on, because it's very important that people know the difference there between the Department of Agriculture young farmer and the revenue young farmer, and that all family members are happy. A lifetime transfer, make sure that they're involved in it, they're sitting down around the table, plan is in place, everybody knows where they are at, rather than a will where the solicitor tells them coldly who got the farm. Other family members then, there may be animosity, we'll say, amongst family members, saying, God, I should have got the farm. Why did you get it? You never done anything around the place. Just because you're the oldest, just because you have a family name. Again, the early transfer mitigates all that resentment. Sitting down together as a family, talking it out, good communications, extremely important. And when we're talking about family, we'll say the important questions that that has to be asked in the family. And some of these questions aren't easy. And we'll say at the end of the day, as I always say, it's the asset owner, the person who owns the farm, the person whose name is on the deeds. That's the person who decision it will be at the end of the day. So basically, we'll say make sure that if parents are will say in the farm and sons or daughters, that there is a will in place, that you've had that discussion with your family, that their will is in place. You have that discussion. Do all of the family members know the position? So basically, do all the family members know if there's a will in place? Where is that going? Do you have a personal, we'll say, affairs checklist in place? That means having all your bank accounts, all your passwords, have that, we'll say, left with maybe the executor of the will, or maybe left with your solicitor, because once you pass on, that may not be there. And have you made position for a long-term care should you need it? The Fair Deal scheme, or maybe savings policy for home care. And why I'm saying all of this is, even though we'll say it may be thought about and it may be talked about, is there actually a plan in place there? It's very important that there is. Are you making PRSI payments to ensure you're entitled to state pension? That's planning for the future for the person that's transferring the farm. Will they be entitled to a contributory state pension? Do they have a pension plan themselves? Have you discussed tax implications of the farm succession? And are there any risks to the succession plan? What we're talking about there, maybe risks to the succession plan. Has somebody, we'll say maybe an illness, whether it's a physical illness, or maybe we'll say suffer a bit of mental illness there, or anything like that. Is there is all areas looked at, and is all areas covered? Make sure that any risks are minimized. Will the farm business still be viable after the succession plan is implemented? Sometimes we look at farms, 100 acres, two, we'll say a son and a daughter in place. What's the fairest way of dividing it down the middle? If you do it, will the farm be viable after it's split up? Many a times it's not. Can you list the risks that could affect your business? Again, we're talking about, we'll say, making the farm unviable by splitting it up too much. Is there, we'll say, sons, daughters, we'll say the next generation following on? Is there a house on the farm that is owned by a third party? So things like that. Have you discussed the plan with your legal representative? That's again with your solicitor. And have you discussed the cost of completing the transfer? Again, very important. Porrick has covered, we'll say, the tax liabilities there. So when we're talking about tax liabilities, you're talking about capital acquisitions tax, capital gains tax, stamp duty. Again, the best man the best man or woman that's qualified for that is a qualified accountant. Other questions that need to be asked: are you aware of all the dates, age limits? As I said there, the age limit of the receiving farmer, from the point of view of revenue and from the point of view of the Department of Agriculture, again, two different ages. Does the successor meet all the educational and or time requirements? So is he qualifying as a full-time farmer? Maybe there is no successor. So have you considered lease, share farming, partnerships, or forestry? Again, sometimes we'll say the successor may be away working, may have a life there. They might be interested in coming home full-time farming. So is there an alternative plan there in place? And finally, we're coming near an end here. Who can help? And when we're talking about, we'll say, the whole area of transfer, every transfer is going to be different. The amount of advice that you can get is really, really, really important. So what we're talking about there is we're talking about getting the information from the qualified sources. Your Teagasc advisor is there to help you in terms of CAP, in terms of collaborative farming arrangements, whether that's a registered farm partnership, whether it's a farm partnership with a neighbour or nephew or something like that, joint herd numbers, any things like that. Your education officer is an invaluable source of information, and we'll say forestry advisors and that. Again, your accountants, solicitors, invaluable. Make sure that you tic tac with them at all times. It's very, very important that that is done. Your citizens' advice, if there's any questions in and around the fair deal, your pension, your entitlements, talk to them. Department of Social Welfare, PRSI payments, work history, etc. If the thing goes off the rails and you need help from a mediator, there is, we'll say, mediators that specialize in agricultural mediation, and they can be contacted on the mmi.ie, the website there for mediations in Ireland. And then again, for around the revenue, paying taxes, stamp duty, and all that, the farm will have to be valued from the state or from the point of view of revenue. So an auctioneer would do that. Now, coming to the end of it, it's very important that all these soft issues are involved, that the whole family is involved in this process. Now, I'm talking about a farm family there, but equally, we'll say if a person is not married and they don't have a family, or they are married and maybe not have a family, that everybody that's around them is involved with it. That if a lifetime transfer is taking place, that people know what's going on. Maybe a brother or sister or anything like that. Talk to people. Make sure that the lines of communication are kept open. And good advice received in time is actually worth its weight in gold. Talk early to your accountant, your agri advisor, your solicitor, and other experts. And be prepared to put in some time and effort to talk and think through the various options. And there is many options, as Padraig mentioned there, about succession partnerships and all that. There is many options there in place. So, as William Shakespeare once said, it's better 3 hours too soon than a minute too late. And on that note, I think that my time is up now, Brendan. So hopefully that I would have touched on everything there. And just finally, as Padraig would have mentioned there, there's further information we'll say available on the booklets that's available here in the Teagasc offices. Guide to transferring the family farm and farm succession and transfer guide. Again, two very good reference points. They're available in the offices and they're also available on the Teagasc website on the link below. So with that, I'll hand you back to Brendan, and if there's any questions, make sure just to type them in on the group chat.
Thank you very much, Enda. Look at a brilliant presentation there. So I'll just get you to stop sharing your presentation. And at this stage, as Enda said, there's still time to put your questions in there. We have a number of questions already. And at this stage of the evening, I'm going to ask my colleague Abagh Harten there to start putting your questions that you have been typing in all evening to both Padraig and Enda. So we'll give you a moment to there, Enda, to catch your breath there. And I think, Ava, you're going to go straight to Padraig. So good evening, Ava.
Thanks, Brendan. Good evening to everyone. Thanks to Padraig and Enda for their presentations. They were very informative. I'll kick off the questions now, and I'll start with Padraig to give Enda a wee bit of a break. The first question that came in there, Padraig, is actually 3 parts to it. So I'll just start with the first part. The grading system of the Green Cert is pass, merit, and distinction. As long as I pass, do I qualify for all the same benefits? What is the failure rate to the Green Cert? And if I put my name down at the information even, do I still need to contact Cora?
Thanks, Eva. I suppose three parts, yeah. Starting with the first one, the pass merit distinction bit. Like
Yeah.
if once you pass the course, and whoever asked that question, yeah, like once you pass the course and you have the achievement, you have the qualification, and there's no distinction, there's no difference in terms of the what you'll achieve with that qualification. Once you have the qualification, you have the qualification, and after that, it doesn't matter. The failure rate for the Green Cert, look at it's I suppose it's an investment in your time and effort into the Green Cert. There's plenty of support there for people that are doing the Green Cert. So look at people that put the work in, generally speaking, and get the support that's there and the help that's there to people. We can assist people in that regard in terms of supports anyway. So it's the pass rate is very high. The pass rate is very high. The failure rate is very low, and oftentimes, perhaps again, sometimes people drop out of the courses, and perhaps it's some of the things that Enda spoke about there earlier, that maybe when they're partly way through, they realize that it's not for them, or the farm is not for them, or it's not so much, it wouldn't be a stumbling block really from the academic side of things. And just in that regard as well, there's as I said, a good lot of support there, and there's even adapted programs there as well for people that are coming, with different learning needs, we'll say, in certain cases as well, and the Green Cert is reflective of that. And the final part of your question, oh yeah, if someone had their name put down already, if you have your name put down already, your name is down. We had an information meeting, I suppose that's what you're talking. We had an information meeting, an in-person meeting in Ball there a number of weeks ago. So if someone put their name down at that, they're very much on the system.
Perfect, thank you. We'll go over to Enda now. There's a question in there in regard to TAMS. What's the difference in being in a registered farm partnership or being in a joint herd number?
Yeah, thanks, Eva. Yeah, no, look, that's a very good question. Basically, a joint herd number is where two names are on the herd number. It's not, we'll say, registered with the partnerships board. So it's not a registered farm partnership. In that case, they only qualify for a 40% grant, whereas your registered farm partnership, they will qualify for 60%, and they will also qualify for, we'll say, double the or the young
Thresholds.
farmer, the double the thresholds. So that's the difference there, and it's very important that if you are going, we'll say, down the road of a registered farm partnership, that you do register it and you start the process early in the year. So you start the process, we'll say, in January, we'll say, of the year that you want to do it, or even earlier, because there is a fair process involved with it.
Yeah, perfect. And back to you, Pork, then. What are the main benefits to a 43-year-old about to do the Green Cert? The benefits through farm succession seem to be limited.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, the benefits are more stacked towards people that are under 35, to the definition of a young farmer, for revenue alone has been up to is 35, and has been 35 for quite a while. In the department, it was extended up to 40. For someone that's 43, from a succession point of view, yeah, you wouldn't be getting the stamp duty relief. There's bits and pieces there you wouldn't be getting. You would hopefully be able to get perhaps entitlements there from the National Reserve as a new entrant. Consanguinity relief is something that you would get, that the Green Cert might be of assistance there in that regard. But consanguinity is independent of age anyway. The if we don't know if it was a woman farmer that asked that question. A woman farmer at 43 would be able to get an enhanced TAMS grant there under the Women Farmer Capital Investment Program there up to any age. But if it's a male person that's asking that question, then that capital incentive isn't there. So look at huge educational benefits, of course, in doing the Green Cert in terms of skills developed, and we have people in our classes at a lot higher ages than 43 doing the Green Cert with ourselves, and it's to develop their skills and their knowledge base, etc. But in terms of some of the incentives that I talked about there, yeah, there wouldn't be as many of them at all applying for people that are over 40 as there are under 40.
Perfect. Thanks, Pork. And back to you then, Enda. Do you need the entire family involved in the succession process?
Definitely, yeah, if you could at all, because as I say, it's one of the biggest decisions that will ever be made, we'll say, around the family farm. And as we all know, we'll say the emotional attachment to your birthplace or to where you were born is very strong. So in as much as is possible, um the whole family should be involved with the process, and the whole family will say would need, like, people have expectations, people have plans, and you will probably see, maybe we'll say within a family, sometimes all a family member wants is maybe a site to build a house on, where they know one family member is going to be the farmer naturally. So it is important to involve everybody in the process and make sure that they're heard. While all expectations may not be able to be met, it's very important that everyone is heard and accommodated in as far as is possible.
Yeah, perfect. And back to you then, Pork. How much is the distance course fee, and does it have to be paid in one installment, or can it be split into a few?
The Teagasc distance course fee it's the same fee for a big number of years now. We're going back to, pre-COVID times for sure. It's been €2,990 for a lot of years, and it's still 2,990. Yeah, it's just short of €3,000. Our applications for that distance course is an online application, and the money is paid up front or paid at the time of application. So again, it's nearly coming back to what we were saying before, the whole planning thing, that it would be important that someone, if they're considering doing the Green Cert, would have planned out even getting the money together there to make an application for it and to become a part of that course as well. But that's the fee that we're talking about. And just while we're talking about the fees, the part-time course, if there's anyone interested in the part-time course, fee is €1,700 for the full Green Cert. A bit of a difference there, and the difference, is down to this idea. Historically there was a capitation grant there paid to all third level institutions. So people that would have a qualification prior to entering the Teagasc Distance Education Green Cert course would have already availed of a capitation grant worth around €1,000. Now, you never see it. I was in college. I never saw that €1,000 coming to me, but apparently it was paid in the background there. And for institutions, colleges, that fee exists and all the rest of it. So someone doing the distance course, it's 2,990, and someone doing the part-time course, it's €1,700, and the fee, as I said, would be payable up front.
And then just on that note, if the distance learning course starts in December 2025, will it involve an on-site learning day?
Yeah, we're saying we're starting December or January, yeah. So it could well be December, depending on it could be December or January, yeah. And I suppose day one usually is an initiation day, which is usually on site. But to be honest with you, it has often happened. In fact, it nearly always happens that someone or other misses that initiation day. So if someone was to miss that day one, it'd probably be more of a delivery and an instruction day. It's just a housekeeping day, I suppose, as much as anything. We wouldn't have got into the coursework as much as day 4 or 5 or something would be. Day one is just kind of an explanatory day. So if there was a day, it's a day that we probably will end up repeating.
Yeah, perfect. We're actually coming towards the end of the webinar now. Any of the questions that were asked and not answered tonight will be replied to via email. I'd like to thank Pork and Enda again for their presentations and answering the questions. And I'll now hand you back to Brendan.
Thank you very much there, Eva. So we're just about out of time this evening. I'd like to thank our two panelists here this evening, Pork and Enda, for their help with the webinar, and indeed to Eva there for answering the questions and putting the questions there, of course, to both Padraig and Enda. And most importantly, thanks to you at home for engaging with us there tonight. As Ava said, we have a few questions there we're going to get back to tomorrow. And indeed, we will get the webinar recorded and uploaded, and it will be available there to watch back on the Teagasc Mayo YouTube channel in the coming days. All that's left for me to say is that Teagasc Mayo are finalising a new schedule there of advisory webinars, which will kick off on Tuesday, the 11th of November at 8 p.m. And the new series will run for 4 weeks, so stay tuned for that and keep an eye out for the adverts in the coming days on social media. And for anyone who was previously registered, then you should receive an email about these webinars in due course. Indeed, as regards our courses, and want to get more information, then please contact the Teagasc office in Ballinrobe on 094 954 1125. Registration will open in the next coming days, so do keep an eye out for that once all has been concluded. So indeed, with that, and until next time, it's good night from us all here in Teagasc Mayo, and take care, folks.
Bye.
Good night.
Nice.
Good night.